how does crypto fix the debt? This is a bold claim. Digital assets, blockchain, smart contracts, Web3, I think, is actually how the world pulls itself out of the crazy amount of debt that we see today. People are aware at this point, the U.S. is in debt over $34 trillion. That's not getting paid back. They continue to print money, the taxes that we produce and the GDP. We're beyond the scope of being able to repay that at this point. And then you've got corporations, you've got credit card debt, you have all of these things just continue to amass debt. And our currency itself really is debt. It's a federal debt note. And all of the other currencies and countries in the world operate in the same manner. We do have Russia that's now backed their currency with gold. We've got some other smaller countries that are doing the same. And I think that's the way that things migrate long term. There's collateral that backs the currency that's being printed. But how do you repay all of this debt? How do you balance the ledger of the world and basically make sure that everybody, because you can't just wipe it. Like I hear people talk about wiping the debt. Well, if you do that, pension funds and all of these other things, these programs that people are counting on for their income on a monthly basis, insurance payouts, annuities, money markets, all that stuff gets disrupted and those people go broke and then people don't get paid and now they're mad. They put all this money into things. So how do you do this in a way that those people still get paid and we repay this back? And it's BlackRock has been doing this since 2008. They are the best at repackaging debt, taking bad debts and putting it with good debts and getting them paid off over time. That's how they've kept the system alive and continue to move forward since 2008. Blockchain and digital assets just amplifies the ability to do that. So how was that possible? You have these networks and you have assets that are native to the network that have to move the value that's put on them and the transaction volume that happens over a network or a protocol. Okay. So let's say one of these digital assets becomes tier 1 collateral or banks hold it on their balance sheet. Okay. I'm agnostic. I have my biases. I think XRP, but maybe it's Bitcoin. Maybe it's something else aside from that. Irrespective of which one it is, this is how this happens. So you have that asset that sits on the bank's balance sheet or their government's balance sheet or the corporation's balance sheet, and they can draw credit against this asset, whatever value it is. If they're using it to transact, it's going to have some value. Okay. And it's tier 1, so it's riskless, hopefully, they designated that. And then you can pull credit against it at a reasonable rate. Maybe it's prime plus 1 or something. And then you can take that and purchase the assets, the other debt, whatever it is, refinance it. And when you do it, you should be able to pull that debt on chain, or the assets that you're purchasing could be pulled on chain. Well, what does that do? Now that value has been pulled from the real world, and now it's listed on the distributed ledger technology that asset gains value from. So it ends up being a positive feedback loop or a flywheel effect where you have this asset sitting on one side of the balance sheet and you might have a whole bunch of debt out here. And when you move it onto the balance sheet, this asset appreciates to meet the liquidity needs to be able to move the value that you've moved onto the network or the protocol. So it's almost self-balancing. And that's how I think the shift from the traditional financial system where we're at with all of these problems, all the liabilities that are outstanding that are never going to be able to be paid back, you have to be able to balance that out with some other assets that offset it, right? And if you understand accounting, that's how it would work. And the asset has to provide liquidity for both sides, the assets and the liabilities on the balance sheet. So it should appreciate, twice as much as whatever amount is moved onto the network, whatever volume of transactions, you have buyers and sellers, whatever it might be, that are transacting that value. The asset, the native asset for whatever protocol that's been tokenized on would then appreciate. So this is how I see the governments, the banks, the enterprises, the institutions, all of these large players that have amassed trillions, quadrillions of dollars worth of debt at this point. This is the only way out of this hole that they're in, is to begin to use this technology and rehypothecate the debt and assets and all the things that have existed in this traditional system onto the blockchain, and then create value in an asset just by using it, basically. They don't have to revalue it like they did with gold and oil and a lot of the other commodities, which has been done in the past to rebalance balance sheets. You know, we've still got the Fed has gold on their balance sheet at like $42 an ounce. So even if they just revalued to the current value of gold, I mean, that's a pretty significant jump in the assets that would then sit on the Fed's balance sheet in comparison to the liabilities and debts, but it's still not enough to cover it. Anyway, hopefully this has given you some insight. I know this is a very progressive idea, and it's not necessarily super easy to understand, but hopefully I've explained it in a way that's comprehensive for you. If it's not, please ask the questions in the comments below. We would love to go over it with you and try to hammer it out so that it is more easily understandable. If you haven't liked, subscribed, please do so, and we'll see you on the next one.